Have you ever wondered what kind of fear could make a supreme god's hand tremble at the sight of a child not yet grown? Not the fear of enemies on the battlefield, not storms or demons, but the fear of his own child of the future. Imagine a being born for one purpose alone, to swallow the sun, tear open the sky, and make the world collapse like a roof snapped in half. Its name is Fenrir, and the cruelest question lies here. If you knew your own child would one day destroy everything, would you kill it in the cradle? Or would you chain it, only for that very chain to hasten the end of the world? In the world of the Norse, where ice and fire coexist like two opposite breaths of the universe, fate is not a distant prophecy. It is a shadow already standing behind every living thing. Odin, the old one-eyed god who paid with blood and soul for knowledge, understood that well. He knew Ragnarök would come. He knew the signs would blaze like fire along the horizon. But there was one thing that frightened Odin in a deeply human way. A creature not yet fully formed, a wolf cub born from the dark veins of the world itself. Fenrir was not born in light. He was the son of Loki, the trickster with a smile sharp as a blade, and Hungrabota, the giantess of ill omens whose very name seemed to chill the wind. From that bloodline came three children like three curses. Hel, ruler of the cold realm of the dead. Jormungandr, the great serpent coiled around the world. And Fenrir, the wolf foretold to swallow the sun and devour Odin himself. The moment the gods heard that prophecy, they no longer saw Fenrir as a child. They saw him as a sentence already signed. Yet in the beginning, Fenrir was simply a living creature. He grew, breathed, watched, learned, and carried a gaze no one could fully read. He was unlike the ordinary wolves of the forest. Fenrir grew at an unnatural pace, as if time poured into his body faster than into anything else. Each passing day his legs lengthened, his shoulders broadened, his teeth gleamed whiter and heavier, and his breath began to carry the scent of storm. The gods watched him grow in the heart of Asgard as one watches a spark catch on a rooftop, telling themselves they were still in control. Strangely, among all those wary eyes, only one god dared to approach Fenrir, Tyr, the god of law, of oaths, of order. The Norse honored Tyr because he was neither ornate nor deceitful. He stood for something a warrior could trust: fairness, discipline, a clear line between right and wrong. And so Tyr was the only one who could feed Fenrir, touch him, look into his eyes without turning away. Here, tragedy began to take root in its most unsettling form. Fenrir might have become something else if he had been trusted, but the world around him knew only fear. The gods tried the simplest method first. They brought a crude chain, iron heavy as the will of fear itself. They told Fenrir it was merely a game, a test of strength. Fenrir looked at them, not naive, yet not quick to refuse. He allowed himself to be bound, then he pulled. Iron shattered like dry branches. The crack of broken metal echoed through Asgard like a first warning. The gods forced laughter, but their hearts turned cold. A second time they returned with a larger, stronger chain. The words were still about games, but their eyes had changed. No longer a test, but calculation. Fenrir allowed them again, and once more he tore it apart. This time it was more than muscle. It was fate proving it was no joke. The stone steps of Asgard seemed to tremble. Shields hanging on the walls rattled softly, and in their sidelong glances, a clear thought emerged. We cannot hold him with anything of this world. So they turned to the dwarves, the legendary smiths of Svartalfheim, where darkness was so thick that even light had to knock before entering. There, things were forged not only of metal, but of paradox, of elements that defied ordinary logic. The dwarves created Gleipnir, a binding thin as silk, soft as a lullaby. At first glance it seemed almost decorative, not something meant to restrain a monster. Yet that absurdity was the essence of magic. The simpler it appears outside, the more terrifying it is within. Gleipnir was woven from things that sounded like fragments of a dream. The sound of a cat's footsteps, something you never hear. The beard of a woman, something that does not exist yet feels deeply wrong. The roots of a mountain, too deep for any hand to reach. The sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the spittle of a bird. These were taken from the world to make the binding, and because of that, the world was left lacking them. They say from that day, you could no longer hear a cat's steps as before. Mountains no longer showed their roots, and small gaps appeared in nature like invisible cuts. The very act of creating the chain was a reminder. To control fear, we often strip the world of some of its innocence. When the gods brought Gleipnir to him, Fenrir looked at the silken band and understood. Not through knowledge, but through instinct, the instinct of a hunted creature. He grew suspicious, and for the first time in this tale, he set a condition. If he were to be bound, one god must place a hand inside his mouth as a pledge. If this was truly a game, no one had reason to fear. But if it was a trap, he would bite. It was more than a threat. It was a final test. Would they dare to offer real trust, or only bind him in lies? The gods fell silent. Each understood what it meant to place a hand within the jaws of fate. Then Tyr stepped forward, not with dramatic heroics, simply as though it was something that had to be done for law to endure. Tyr placed his hand in Fenrir's mouth, a warm hand within the darkness of sharp teeth. In that moment, tragedy pressed against the heart of the story. The one who trusted Fenrir most would suffer the greatest loss because of the collective decision. Fenrir allowed himself to be bound. Gleipnir wrapped around his legs like silk around a wrist, gentle, almost tender. Then Fenrir pulled. There was no shattering metal, no flying links, only a silence heavy as stone. He pulled harder. His body strained, muscles rising like mountains under tension. Yet Gleipnir did not move, and in that instant Fenrir understood. This was no game, no test. It was a sentence. His gaze changed. If pain had a sound, it would have been a roar swallowed deep in his throat. Fenrir opened his jaws, and Tyr lost his hand. Blood fell to the ground like a mark carved into the earth. Tyr did not cry out in long lament. He stood there, one-handed, like a statue newly carved from sacrifice. The gods gained temporary safety, but they had created something more dangerous than Fenrir's strength: absolute hatred. Bound in chains, Fenrir's growl became the background sound of the future, like distant war drums before the army is seen. Some tales say the gods wedged a sword between Fenrir's jaws to prevent him from biting, and his drool flowed into a river called Van, as if the world itself bore a wound from that choice. Fenrir lay there, neither dead nor truly alive, existing only to wait for the day the binding would break. In Norse myth, waiting is never endless. It is only fate gathering momentum. Then came Ragnarök. The sky tore like burning cloth. The sun dimmed, and the wind carried the smell of ash. Fenrir rose, not because he had suddenly grown stronger, but because the appointed hour had arrived. Even a chain forged of paradox could not overcome the law of endings. The wolf surged across the battlefield like night with teeth, his jaws so vast that one was said to scrape the earth while the other touched the sky. He devoured all in his path, and at last found Odin. The god who once sought to escape destiny now faced it with spear and single eye. This was no ordinary duel. It was the universe fulfilling its own prophecy. Fenrir swallowed Odin, and then Fenrir was slain by Vidar, Odin's son, who used a special shoe to pry apart the wolf's jaws and tear him open. A family cycle closed in blood, just as the first fear foretold. Father killed by child, child killed by another child. Family as a rope braided from love and destruction. Yet Fenrir is not merely a monster of legend. He is a symbol so vast, if you look closely, you will see him everywhere, even in modern life. Fenrir first embodies the fear of parenthood, the fear that what we create will outgrow our control, the fear that children will shatter the world we built. Odin represents authority, order, the system. Fenrir represents the force of the future, the next generation, the new and misunderstood, the thing the system does not comprehend and therefore seeks to lock away. Here lies a painful question. Was Fenrir truly evil from the beginning, or did he become ruthless because he was betrayed? The myth does not answer clearly, and that ambiguity mirrors reality. Some children are labeled early as dangerous, broken, beyond repair. Treated as such, they grow into the label, not because of fate, but because society wove a Gleipnir of prejudice around their ankles. And when they finally break free, people say, "See, he was always like that." It is a cycle no less terrifying than Ragnarök. Gleipnir itself is a powerful modern symbol. Thin as silk, it resembles no prison. It feels like freedom. It resembles invisible laws, social pressure, family expectations, praise and criticism, algorithms, standards of success. You do not feel its weight, yet you cannot break it. And when you finally realize you are bound, you may have already lost much. Perhaps a hand, perhaps a piece of humanity, perhaps trust in those who once claimed it was only a game. Tyr lost his hand for an oath. He stands as a symbol of those who must pay the price for systems to function. In modern society, there are always such figures, standing between sides, offering themselves as guarantees so that others may trust. They may be lawmakers, guardians of professional ethics, people striving for honesty in environments built on compromise. Often, they are the first wounded. The tale of Fenrir is not only about gods and monsters, but about the cost of trust and the cost of its absence. And what of Fenrir as the wolf who swallows the sun? In some versions, the wolves Skoll and Hati chase and devour the sun and moon. Yet Fenrir remains the greatest shadow behind that image, as the heart of Ragnarök's terror. To swallow the sun in symbolism is not merely a physical act. It is the extinguishing of light, order, familiar rhythm. It is what happens when a society falls into war, when a civilization collapses, when an individual sinks into despair so deep that tomorrow disappears. Fenrir embodies darkness born within the structure of family and power, not from beyond its borders. Compared to modern culture, Fenrir resembles figures we both fear and admire. In some sense, he is like Godzilla, a force awakened or created by humanity, which humanity then desperately seeks to destroy. He echoes the story of artificial intelligence, where we yearn to build something smarter than ourselves, yet fear will replace us. He mirrors youth movements and uprisings, changes the old guard cannot understand and therefore try to suppress. And the more tightly they suppress, the stronger the backlash grows. Odin tried to evade prophecy, yet his very evasion carved the straightest path toward it. This is what makes Norse myth painfully real. It does not promise that doing right guarantees reward. It only says that every choice carries a cost. Had Odin killed Fenrir early, he would have been a child slayer out of fear, staining his throne with moral shame. Had he raised Fenrir with trust, he might have released a future catastrophe. He chose a third path, binding, and that path forged a Fenrir humiliated, betrayed, transformed into the very monster foretold. In other words, sometimes what we fear most does not grow on its own. It is fed by how we treat it. Still, the story is not merely an accusation. It also acknowledges that some forces in life truly surpass individual control. Some children are born into violence, poverty, trauma, and systems can only restrain, not heal. Some technologies evolve faster than ethics and law. Some crises, climatic, social, economic, grow like modern Fenrirs, swelling day by day, while we insist it is only a game, only a test. And when they finally pull, when iron snaps, we understand too late what we were playing with. Fenrir also reminds us of one of humanity's deepest fears, the fear of being replaced. A king fears his throne stolen. A father fears his child surpassing him. A system fears a generation rewriting its rules. If that fear is not faced honestly, it becomes a Gleipnir, binding what should instead be guided and transformed. And one day, that fear turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you finish the tale of Fenrir, what remains is not only the image of a colossal wolf devouring Odin. What remains is a question hanging like a storm-filled sky. Are we creating our own Fenrir? In our families, our societies, our technologies, in how we raise children, in how we label them, in how we use power to bind instead of understand. And if so, from what invisible threads is our Gleipnir woven? What unheard cat footsteps? What hidden mountain roots? What subtle pieces of life have we already taken without noticing? Fenrir, the wolf of Ragnarök, ultimately dies. But the fear he represents does not. It is reborn in every generation, whenever the old look upon the young and see an uncontrollable future. Norse mythology does not command you to believe in fate. It simply places a mirror before you and says, look closely. For sometimes the monster that swallows the sun does not come from the forest. It grows in your own yard, beneath the gaze of those who insist they are only playing a game.